Welcome to the Deep Blue Podcast, episode 1 of series 2. Now, you'll notice we've had a bit of a glow up in the meantime. So really excited to be in our new location today. And we have our special guest, Stacey van der Aardweg.
That was great. I'll
There.
take it.
Okay.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it is. But I've done it justice.
You've done just great.
Okay.
Yeah. I normally, actually, when I present, just say Stacey, because
Okay.
the rest is just complicated.
Okay, we'll here on go from Stacey throughout. But thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate you coming down. And yeah, I'd love to sort of dig into your past, your present, your future, where you see things going, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go straight in. So your time at Amazon, obviously you've moved on from a pretty senior role within the business, and you've gone on to become your own founder. So I want to talk a little bit about that before we go into the specifics of Amazon, if that's all right. So that decision process, like, what did you go through? Like, how did you feel it was time for you to leave the nest and go off on your own accord?
Well, I guess one of my reflections is that some people grow up at Amazon. They arrive as graduates and they have fully fledged careers and very long ones there. But I had a career before Amazon. And so what I was very used to was change. And I started my career as an investment banker in the middle of the financial crisis, which was an interesting time. You learn a lot about people, actually. And then I spent some time at the World Health Organization. I'd done a master's in health policy, and I really wanted to understand what international development looked like. I was born in South Africa, and I've got very strong roots in Africa still. And so I thought, well, maybe there's a way I can be impactful there. It didn't work out for a number of different reasons. And so I was a management consultant for a while. And again, a lot of that was driven by go and learn something new, go and get really great insights about how other smart people tackle problems. And I also looked for variety. And the joy of being a consultant is you can do lots of different things. And all of that brings more capability, more experience, different perspectives. And from there, I ended up going to run a sports retail business. So this was really my first taste of retail long before Amazon. This probably quite troubled business. And it had 300 stores and a team of 120. I was in my late 20s and someone said, we've acquired this business. It needs a new leader. Do you want to go and do it? And I thought, well, you don't say no to something like this. This is a real career highlight, but it's really hard.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. Lots of people watching you and the board and investors who are saying, well, when are we going to get returns? But I got to do some really cool stuff. I got to learn about leadership in a really tangible way. I got to work with some really amazing global sports brands, and I love sport. It's what I do outside of work and family, sometimes with family. And so I got to work with Nike and Adidas and New Balance, which was fabulous. And after that, I ran a freelance business. So I was a value creation consultant for private equity owned businesses. So, I had this very winding path before Amazon. And one of the drivers for leaving was I had never anticipated staying for 8 years.
Okay.
I had a wonderful time there where there was learning and variety and all that good stuff. And I started to think maybe there's another way that I could generate and address all of those things that have always been meaningful to me in terms of progression and also kind of learning and it tickles my curiosity, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was one big driver. I think the other one was looking for a little bit more flexibility and autonomy.
Okay.
Amazon is a really big machine and it does a lot very well.
Yeah.
But I have a young family and I had given a lot to the business and I'd got a lot back out of it. But it had come at the expense of certainly elements of my health and time that I could spend with my own family. Yeah. And so this opportunity that I now have is a little bit more of a blend of having more autonomy and choice over what I do and when I do it.
Yeah.
And it's really brought the joy back into the way that I get to spend time with my kids, which is cool.
That's great. So a bit of like your priorities shifting in some ways towards the end of your time with Amazon.
Yeah. Well, actually, I took about 18 months to really reflect on the journey that I'd had.
Yeah.
And really tried to better ascertain what was important to me in the long run. I think I'd spent a long time very career focused and ambitious. I still am, maybe differently now. And I was very hungry for progression. And so as part of that, I took on the journey from what was a kind of category leader is the title that Amazon gives one of the roles that I'd first started as. And I was very keen to progress to being a director at Amazon, which is it's a tough path.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you conform, right? There are a very clear, as you might expect, set of structured criteria that you need to tick all the boxes. You'll tick them really well and better than everyone else who wants to do the same thing. And so that had been a priority for 3-4 years. And what that meant is it detracted from my ability to do other things. So that kind of 18 months of reflection was really saying, there was one exercise I ended up doing with the coach, and she said, it's your 70th birthday. You wake up in the morning reflecting who you'd like to spend time with that day and what they're going to say about you. And it really gave me pause, and it made me realize, actually, if I'm solving for the long term, one, I need to have a healthy enough body to get to 70. I really hope that happens. Nah, still playing paddle. It'd be fun. But I want to make sure that the community of people around me who can join me on that day are a bunch of people who feel like I've really respected and invested in the time that I have with them.
Yeah. There's a real sort of sense of a thirst for knowledge sort of coming through like throughout your career that I've just got immediately. So I can sort of see that and how like you take that and apply it to where you're going now. But going back to that last point, do you almost feel people don't take enough time out to actually reflect and realize that, have that moment of realization, like looking into the future to understand, actually, am I too caught up in the now that I can't step back and look at where things are going to be in the future? How do you feel that sort of manifests itself from what you've seen, and maybe related to your time at Amazon?
Well, I think it's very understandable you don't have the time. And I think that when I reflect on my 30s, a decade just gone, it's a really intense period. It's a really formative part of the type of career that you want to be doing for your longer term, or in my instance, trying to get to the point of being executive, if you're allowed to call it that. And then what does that mean for the foundations for the future? It's a time when, for me, I got married and I started a family, and there are lots of competing priorities, and fundamentally time is the thing you do not have, nor probably energy, right?
Yeah.
And so when are you going to get the opportunity to step back? And so I think a lot of it came down to recognizing that there were a bunch of things that I needed to change in order to stay healthy. And so it was worth the investment in reprioritizing and taking that time and making that space.
Yeah.
And I think the only time that I've really come across it in others is when I've been privileged enough to mentor people or have really good relationships with people on my team who, in the process of having personal development conversations or something, you start to recognize that maybe they are on a similar journey, and you want to or kind of agreed collectively to create the space for them to start thinking a little bit more long term.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think you talked a bit about your time at Amazon there, and let's delve into that and then let's unpick that. So 8 years there.
Yep.
Senior level role, director of FBA.
Yes.
Within the business. So, a very successful career. When you look at your time at Amazon, what were the key learnings that you really sort of took out of that time there? Obviously, you've had multiple roles before. You've talked about management consulting, etc. But your time at Amazon specifically, from what I hear, is working at Amazon is a bit of a different beast. The way it operates, and I've never worked for Amazon, right? But I've sort of picked bits up. Is that true? And what were the sort of the key things that you saw within your time there?
Well, so you everything's different, which sounds mad, but it really is. So I joined at a time where people would onboard in person. Post-COVID, there's a lot more remote onboarding, but my experience walking through the door was you spend half a day talking about how peculiar Amazon is on your first day before you even get your laptop.
Right.
And they talk a lot about this idea of what day one culture means to them, the way that you think, the importance of innovation, and they start to help you understand the concept of leadership principles, this very deeply inculcated system of conversation and describing the behaviors that they expect of you if you work with them, for them, and what the benefits are of that for customers, for the way that they build things, for the way that you deliver results, and the phenomenal growth that the business has demonstrated. And I think that what I found fascinating was particularly these leadership principles. They talk a lot about what does ownership mean, right? And to be there, how do you build trust? What does trust actually look like, and the importance of it in the way that that whole system works together across, I think at one point in time, 1.5 million people.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating, how you create so many standardized in the best possible way systems that as a business scales, they don't break. Lots breaks, but there were a lot of things that were very consistent. The other thing that I found very consistent was the ways of working. They had these recipes, for want of a better word, around how do you innovate these documents called PRFAQs. The first time you think of a new idea that you want to bring to life, first you think about the customer, then you articulate in the future why this is such a game-changing initiative. And thereafter, you start to think about, well, how will we get there? And a lot to do with what they call mechanisms. So how do we, in the process of running a business, understand what is working and what is broken? How do we bring a group of people together to do that in a consistent way? So we all understand what the rules are. We all understand what good looks like. And then we can together formulate a way of moving forward and being even more impactful with the resources we have and the context that we're operating in.
Yeah.
And a really simple example of that is something called a WBR, right? So this is a weekly business review. It's pretty standard in a lot of retail organizations, but the rhythm of it at Amazon relative to some of the other retailers I'd worked in was a much more data-focused conversation about where are the defects, which are always hard to have a conversation about what's broken first. I think a lot of the time you celebrate your top line and your growth and what's going well. Amazon is a very defect-focused culture. And what it does is it means that you take action on things that are broken and you fix them to improve where you've been.
Yeah.
And my personal reflection is sometimes too much of a focus on defects can be really destructive for teams and for individuals.
Yeah.
Because it does permeate beyond just business performance into how are you working and how are you as an individual performing, and think too much.
Well, on that point as well, then, do you think it suits a particular person in that type of working style and the principles as well? There's a particular type of individual that's suited to working at Amazon, and a particular type of person that isn't so well suited to Amazon. And did you see that in your time when people would come in maybe and be like, they'd know straight away, this is not for me?
Yes. So I definitely think, well, everything's a distribution, right? In any company, you see that there's a specific kind of culture, and some people are more comfortable in that culture than others, and other people learn very quickly how to evolve. I think in an organization the size of Amazon, it's very understandable that it does not evolve to suit you.
Right.
It's very hard to do that, isn't it? Even in a small business. And I think the trends that I observed are there were some people who would stay 6 to 12 months and realize that the fit was not good for them. And that is totally okay. Going back to the peculiarity of what Amazon does and how it does it, it's not for everyone. And particularly, it asks a lot of individuals, and it asks that you operate in a very specific way. And then there were groups of individuals who would stay maybe kind of 3 to 5 years. And in that time, you can do a tremendous amount. You probably do at least 2 different roles. So that gives you exposure to lots of different elements of the business. And it often teaches you a lot of diverse skills, which I think is wonderful. And then my observation was that there are people who tend to stay forever thereafter. Okay. They are the people who've learned the rules, they know how to operate in a really, let's call it an optimized way, how to navigate the system and the network that they've built to be really successful and impactful. And I think that I reflected on the fact that actually, I don't think many people thought I was a natural Amazonian going in terms of my style of working, and probably more to do with the way that I lead and I index probably more on the EQ side of things than a lot of my peers did. And so a lot of the learning for me was, how do I adapt? How do I learn the rules and evolve the way that I operate to meet the expectations that are very clear, but without losing myself or what I believe very strongly is a leadership style that I want to be true to.
Yeah, makes sense. And we've talked quite a lot there about working environment, type of like person, learnings from Amazon. If we sort of move into sort of the actual the environment of sellers and brands on Amazon. So obviously, within your role, a lot of exposure to working with some large brands and being across them as well. In your experience, what would you say people would commonly sort of misunderstand about selling on Amazon from like a brand perspective?
So, firstly, my reflection is that the businesses that sell on Amazon and the people within those businesses are, by and large, incredibly sophisticated. Uh, I spent a lot of time working with businesses that manufactured in China or were predominantly Chinese-owned businesses, but also some of the most amazing, UK-based brand businesses that had grown up on Amazon and, in some instances, outgrown Amazon. They're now in lots of different channels, right? Their understanding of how Amazon operates, how to make the most of it, is probably far superior to the majority of my team. But collectively, as a team, we could get around all of the different nuances that were appropriate for a business. I just think that they study and they really very deeply understand how to make the most of that channel. And that is what has supported their success and arguably their survival in an environment where Amazon is complicated, right?
Yeah.
But I think in turn, to go back to your question on what is misunderstood, I think there are two things. Where brands can come short is expecting Amazon to stay the way it was when they start working for them. I think Amazon is ever changing and there is no one simple playbook. And so if you start and think that you know the rules and how to do ads as well as you can and what your growth levers are, for example, and what is expected of you when you inbound into FBA, which is a long list, right? That will change. So will the fee structure and what that means for your unit economics. So will some of the expectations around how you manage your account health. And so I think that the brands that have struggled have been those that have lagged on the evolution of how they operate.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes down to the fact that they couldn't necessarily invest as much as they need to, both in their operations and in the investment that they put into the platform itself.
Yeah. No, makes sense. And then in terms of the seller business at Amazon, so how did you find sort of the interactions between sort of vendors and sellers?
I'm a huge seller fan.
Okay.
I love that business, partly because of the exposure to these sellers that are incredibly innovative. I think that the thing that I noticed the most between having been a retail leader and then transitioning across the marketplace was that, by and large, retail vendors are big, right? They are established businesses, often very matrixed, often multinational, and they have a standard rhythm of how they operate. It's very cyclical. They know when the negotiations are. They understand peak very, very well. And they have an expectation of a one-to-one relationship with the business, which possibly less so now, but certainly back then, that was still something that we could support.
Yeah.
And so it was very predictable. You knew when things were not going to go well with them, and you knew when things were going well with them. And that meant that you were able to prepare in an appropriate way and get your team directed quite well to do their jobs. The marketplace, it's like an aircraft carrier, and there is no one-to-one. You have to, whatever you do, you need to think about solving for 1,000 businesses at a time. And whatever you do, you need to think about how do you influence 1,000 businesses at a time. Otherwise, it just won't work. But those businesses are, in their own right, innovating and changing because they are hugely ambitious and growing very fast. And their R&D cycles super tight. And they are solving for a very specific customer. I used to speak to Chinese businesses. There was one which is, it started off as a swimwear business for women. And they had this structure where each individual team would focus on a single country and they would optimize sizes, variations of individual SKUs to the point where they knew exactly what red bikini top would work in Germany that wouldn't work in the UK and how to adapt the pricing for it. That level of nuance isn't something that I necessarily saw on the vendor side of the org.
Yeah.
And as a result, their affinity for utilizing data and making sure that all of their metrics were really fine-tuned was really fascinating. And it loads from them.
Yeah. It seems to be the data. If you can master the data, it guides the decision, right? In terms of how you operate and how you see success from an Amazon perspective.
And I think that's why there's this whole ecosystem around Amazon.
Yeah.
When you look at the integrators and the agencies and the experts who are helping those businesses to understand as it becomes a more and more complicated channel to operate in, I think that's really important that brands are sharing knowledge with others, because that is the only way that you can really survive, right?
Yeah.
Is that partnership, and looking to tools that are external to Amazon, which is a controversial view, but I still think it holds, where those tools are designed with the brand in mind. How do we really help you as a business to succeed?
Yeah. I think on that point as well, if you are advising a brand, either a startup or someone who's well established, and you were to advise them, how could they scale on Amazon, where would a starting point be for you?
So the short answer is you need to invest in ads. If you can't invest in ads, you won't grow.
Yeah.
You are the expert, but certainly that's something that has been a common theme with the brands that I've spoken to.
And do you think that's evolved over time? Do you think it's more critical now than it's ever been in historical years?
Yes, there is so much competition, and there is a lot less white space, I think, in terms of new categories to enter into, new consumer trends. And there is more off Amazon competition as well. And so I think that probably the two biggest differentiators are building a brand itself on Amazon, and how do you really drive equity in that with your brand store and what you stand for and how you treat customers and the quality of the product. But that, I think, has been evergreen, right? That's been there since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And the second one, though, I think is the differentiator that helps to drive search conversion and reviews. And a lot of that, I think, comes back to advertising now. And I that is by Amazon's design as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you will start to see that playing out on other channels where maybe the ad tech and product is not quite yet developed. But I would suspect that we'll start seeing it on marketplaces like Fair, which is a similar but different formulation of the Amazon platform, but maybe a little bit further behind on that journey.
Yeah.
I think the longer answer for brands is you should only be going into Amazon and using it as a channel when you're very clear on the strategic reason for it.
Okay.
And secondly, when you are operationally ready for it. Can you service high levels of demand and high levels of operational expectation to make the most out of the channel at the lowest cost?
Yeah. And playing into that, how do you see a lot of the new entrants coming into the market? Obviously, Amazon, really established marketplace, been around for years and ultimately the most dominant. But you see new players emerging in the market, JD.com, Temu, so on and so forth. How do you see their offering impacting what Amazon does?
I think it's a really interesting dynamic. I think on the surface, it seems like competitors are very focused on one specific element of a customer group, a category, or an ASP even, right? Where Amazon has always been a generalist, the everything store. And I think that makes it very difficult for Amazon to move as fast as some of these new incumbents.
Yeah.
Because they are so very good at tackling that one specific thing that is their USP. And what I find interesting is I think personally, my view is that over the last three years, perhaps Amazon has been slower to evolve because of its size. And it is now starting to realize that that has held them back. And they have been more reactive than I saw them in the first 5 years of my career there, because of the scale of what they are trying to do. Now, I think that there is this, we'll call it a right sizing at the moment, of what is the long tail of innovation and investment as a business that we need to maybe park for now and focus back on the core, and where we are not focused on the core of a really phenomenal stores and marketplace proposition where we have incredible speed for customers and all of the great CX that customers have come to expect, which is a growth driver.
Yeah.
Then those other innovations that we invest in need to be real needle movers. So less distraction, more focused on the kind of central business again. And I think that should enable them to get back into the cycle of innovation that maybe we expected and observed quite a lot in the lake up 2015 to 2020.
Yeah. Interesting predictions there. We're gonna move on we're going to talk. So thank you very much for that view and your background, your experience at Amazon. It's been, I think it's incredible to learn about. I think we're going to talk a little bit now about where you are now as an individual. So founder, part of two businesses.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give us a bit of an overview as to both, and then we'll delve into those in a bit more detail?
I find the founder title quite problematic.
Okay.
Really, I mean, am I? What does it mean? No one gives it to you. I even found trying to say to someone I'd launched a business hard, because what is a launch? When is the day? You don't get a certificate. You definitely don't get a job contract. Certainly don't get a paycheck. So that's a tricky one. I guess maybe reframing it, I left Amazon in search of some of the themes we've talked about. I wanted purpose. I wanted learning. I wanted in some way to have an impact, but I was very open to what that looked like. And I was also very conscious that I wanted to be part of a broader ecosystem, because I'd left a big one.
Yeah.
And I was looking to kind of reestablish maybe a brand and a network. And so the first business actually was born out of a conversation with a 14-year-old boy at a school that I was teaching business skills at. I was on gardening leave, and I thought, well, let's go and talk about, what is it like to work in a business, and how does retail work, and buying and selling, and, profit equals revenue minus cost. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, do you know anything about selling stuff? And I said, well, I mean, I've been on one side of it, sure.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I sell little Lego figurines on Etsy. Here's my business. And he opened up his Etsy seller page, and he personalized Lego figurines. A man in Minnesota would print them and then drop ship them globally. And I think he was actually a lot more successful than he'd let on.
Right.
He said, well, now I want to sell bespoke tracky bottoms with something on them. I thought, oh gosh, like selling in the fashion space is a disaster, because your customer returns are through the roof. And when you're 40, one thing you don't have is cash to invest in stock.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation about it. And then I said to him, well, why can't you ask one of your teachers? You're at this beautiful school and they've got really great curriculum. And he said, well, I'm not doing A-levels, so I don't get to do business skills or business studies or economics. I'm too young for that. And my teachers have never done this before, so they are slightly at a loss as well. So that was the genesis of this tool called Spark that I ended up building with an ex-Amazon colleague. And the thesis was, can you democratize entrepreneurship using the power of AI?
Okay.
You compartmentalize knowledge in a structured way and then personalize it, so that if you're 14, you have access to a tool that can give you the answers this individual is seeking, in your own time, in your own way. And you feel like you have the support that you need as you go through that journey. And similarly, if you are a career changer in, I don't know, when you're late 30s, or you're getting back into the workforce and you want to start a coffee shop, for example, is there a way that you could access it then? There are a lot of other options for that. Some of them are really expensive. Some of them are very hard to access outside normal working hours.
Yeah.
And some of them consume a huge amount of time or money before you actually get real value. So we built this AI tool. It's live. We've got a few universities who are trialing it, which is really exciting. We've got a few senior schools who are now using it as well for their entrepreneurship programs. And I hope that it just becomes an enabler of more commercial awareness and understanding, and helping aspiring entrepreneurs and people who've started their own businesses to make better commercial decisions.
Yeah. Having your own AI coach in your pocket, effectively.
Yes.
To ideate and bounce ideas off and accelerate your own things. I think that's so that piece around, particularly around the younger generation, students in particular.
Yeah.
Having access to that level of support has never really been an option unless you have someone who can mentor you regularly. They've got the time to dedicate to you. But this now seems to open all of those, or solve all those barriers, right? From that perspective.
Yeah. So I think, the research we've done and the partnerships we have definitely demonstrate that universities are investing more and more in the space. A lot of them have got incubators or programs that they offer to their students. Students just need to be proactive enough to go and engage.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of them are limited. So you need to apply, only a certain portion may get in. And so what we're thinking about is, how do you create something that's scalable? Going back to my Amazon roots, how do I do something that can help 1,000 instead of just one at a time? with the same level of quality is a really important piece.
Yeah.
So this is trying to create facilities for those organizations that are trying to make an impact to do it at scale. The future of work is something that I am concerned about. I'm not sure we know what it's going to be, and therefore I don't think we are necessarily as prepared as we'd like to be for a world that has been radically changed by AI in particular, but also automation. And by some of the, I think, economic factors and headwinds that we're starting to exert. And so I think the more that we can equip generations to build skills earlier and to differentiate themselves so that they are positioned well for the career of their choice, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
There are fewer internships, there are fewer graduate jobs out there. And so making opportunities for people to build their own career and experience, I think, is really important.
I think the skills piece you touch on there is really important. It's sort of, certainly when I look back at my career, I've been in the working world for a number of years now, and sort of AI's come in, and it's almost, I'm now adopting AI principles in the business, and it's this massive resource that's never been there. So it's almost like a bit of a quantum shift in terms of how people work and what they can do, their productivity, etc. When you look at skills as an overall, how do you see AI impacting the relevancy of skills for individuals going forward in the workplace? Do you see some skills being more important than others, other skills sort of dying out? How do you feel the skills mix will be impacted by AI now being available?
Big question, Zach.
It is a big one. It is. We've got plenty of time.
I think I think the benefits of having a broad skills base, certainly early in your career, will continue to exist, right? The ability to understand how to look at data and do something interesting with it, the decision making that comes from that. Even if AI does a load on insight generating, even with all of the sexy dashboards you can now build, your ability to look at it and see, well, what does that mean when I apply it to my business, my team, my next choice of what I do with my time is really important. Similarly, I think when it comes to how do you structure your time and operate, kind of the project management skills that I think probably were core to what people developed, certainly as a management consultant in the first 3 to 5 years of my career. Those are going to continue to be important, even if they are supported by AI, giving you more structure, helping you move faster in terms of how you make the most of your diary. It's slightly petrifying that you'll get bossed around by a computer, but I guess we always have many. And I think the things that will become differentiators are, how good is your critical listening? So how good are you at joining the dots between a whole bunch of different signals, some of them which may be data-based, some of them are going to be to do with what people are saying and how they're behaving. Some of it's going to be to do with geopolitical trends you see. What can you see as a result of all of those things? And therefore, what will you make of them? What comes next strategically because of that? And I think the other piece that I can't get enough of is the piece around relationship. I still think that in a world where we have all of this amazing optimization support from AI tools that are incredible, nothing beats being able to build trust with someone, being able to demonstrate who you are, how you think, and the value that you can add as an individual. Have conversation, be kind, empathy. I think all of these things are the way that there is still a currency that will exist afterwards, that makes opportunities, builds partnerships, gets people to decide that they're going to buy your product instead of someone else's. It's what you stand for as a brand and how you behave that I think still matters and will continue to.
Yeah, the soft skills equally still as important as the hard skills, even though AI is here to help.
Exactly.
Those ones.
And I think a lot of people are trying to wrestle with, how do we rebrand soft skills so that it doesn't sound like it lacks value? Because if anything, I think it's going to be the stuff that is even more valuable in time.
Yeah, makes sense. And then so you've talked about sort of Spark. You also have founded another business.
I have. It wasn't because I was bored. So at the end of last year, I realized a few things. One is, to be in the founder environment, I was curious about what good looked like. I think you may know, but when you start a business, you don't have a whole group of peers who you learn from and you benchmark against, right? And so I went looking for that environment just to see what it was like. And I'd heard a lot about incubators and accelerators and these early stage environments where they help you to grow a business, and then there is investment of that as a path that you choose afterwards. So I was on one of those at the end of last year, full curiosity. And the privilege that I had was 8 weeks to think very deeply about topics that I have a previous professional understanding of and expertise in, and to explore those problem statements and therefore validate them and come out the other side of the idea. And as part of that, I went back to my consumer roots and I started thinking about, what if I created a Venn diagram would be a problem that covers something within the logistics supply chain space, something around what data, ALM, and automation could improve on, and within the consumer space, so the moving around of goods and selling them. And I got to the point where I realized that there is a problem for lots of businesses around managing cash flow. When I ran this retail business years and years and years ago, cash flow was my biggest headache. How am I going to make payroll? Worse still, how am I going to pay my VAT bill every 3 months?
Yeah.
And I've got the inflows from one side, but I've also got to pay a load of suppliers, and that was a real headache. And there were tools to help us. And when you're small, you are the power asymmetry between you and the brands who you're working with was really problematic in terms of the terms that we could ask for. And turning it on its head and thinking about it from an Amazon perspective, retailers are very demanding about how you service their needs from a supply perspective, and then also what the terms of working up with them are. And for a lot of brands, it's a really, really valuable channel for their growth. So they have to say yes. And so we got to the point where we realized actually a lot of cash is getting tied up in these relationships. And often, scandalously, they don't pay on time.
Yeah.
They don't pay in full. And then you go into the cash fight, which is you've got my money. It is my money legitimately. But short of sending a bailiff round to a very large retailer, which is basically unheard of,
Yeah.
how do you get it back? But it has a very real implication for a lot of brands in terms of how they can grow and continue to sustain themselves. And so we are building a solution that says across all of your different channels, how do you get a clear view of where your cash is, where it's working for you and where it's stuck? Why is it stuck? So you can go and fix it or have a difficult conversation. But also, how can we start to use automation to reduce the amount of work that goes into managing your reconciliation and your disputes and deductions? Which has been a really cool journey, both on the tech side, but also on the relationship side, to have conversations with brands who are articulating some of these challenges. And they're not just small brands. There are really, really big ones as well who are saying this is a headache. And we've struggled to solve it with people, with existing technology, and we're looking for something that will work in the long term.
Yeah. Amazing. I can see that, especially for smaller brands, cash flow is absolutely key to just keeping the business alive and keeping it going. And you're right, if you're in a negotiation with a large retailer and they have got certain terms you have to abide by, then you're almost powerless to challenge, right? And in terms of from what you've seen so far, like the typical sort of cash traps that you see for smaller organizations, what do they typically look like from your perspective? What have you seen that's been like a common theme?
So disputes, deductions, chargebacks. At Amazon, we loved an acronym, right? PPVs and PQVs. Basically, there's a discrepancy in the quantity that was delivered, what you think you delivered versus what the brand says or the retailer says was delivered. And that results in a discrepancy in terms of what gets paid. PPVs, discrepancy in price. I think that this is how much I owe you per unit. So you think it's a different number, and the gap is usually something that the brand needs to suck up. And then there's a whole long list of other things, right? In terms of marketing co-op, in terms of how you treat damages. And, the other operator within the mix of this is a carrier. So the carrier is bringing your stuff in. They may or may not have delivered it in the right way at the right time. And I think they also sometimes feel the pinch. So we are also starting to explore how is it that we make this process easier for carriers as well, so that you are reducing tense conversations, time spent chasing documents, and the difficulty of, where does the payment go and who agrees to split the bill and in what way.
Yeah. And that I guess doesn't just apply to small scale startup retail type organizations. It's still the same for large scale enterprise well established businesses as well.
Yes, I think sometimes the solutions may look different.
Okay.
Because the level of risk or the level of frustration or the prioritization may be different. We certainly see that there's some great enterprise tools out there, but for smaller businesses, mid-sized businesses, they can be quite expensive.
Yeah.
And so we're also looking to find something that is low cost, very flexible, with very, very light implementation. So we're reducing the risk, and we're making sure that the ROI of working with us is something that's really clear from the start.
Amazing. And well, what's been the feedback so far? So, and this is almost for both businesses, right? For Spark and for Fluxo as well. What's been the initial feedback that you've had, and how have you taken some of that feedback and then shaped the product or the deliverable going forwards?
So for Spark, if I think about some of the stuff that I now know about what you should do when you start a business that I did not do, one of the things I talk about is product market fit. Are people willing to pay for your product? Which gives a really nice signal that you got it right. And the second one is, you tend to take the process of you build something scrappy, you ask people for feedback, you make it better, and then you start selling it. For Spark, I was time poor and also maybe a little over ambitious. And so we thought, well, let's try and skip that first step, build something, and then try and find paying customers. If you can do the double whammy, then that's great, right? I get the feedback and I get the cash. And so it gave us a really strong focus on trying to sell very hard, very fast. And what we realized was it was more likely if we sold some expertise on the side of the product at the same time. So our first iteration of Spark's launch into the world was actually as a workshop, which was a brave foray because your tech is never going to work the first time you use it, but we thought we'd give it a roll. And so we had a bunch of paying customers who came to a workshop. We called it a business building masterclass. And so you had classroom facilitation for a group of actually many of them second-time founders who wanted to go back to let's spend some time digging into a problem and validating it. And that was really, really fun, but a little bit hairy because we were really hoping that things rolled and worked from the tech perspective as we were hitting the PowerPoint slides all the same time. And we got some really great feedback from that. And so we just launched our second iteration. And what that's done is it's made us a lot more confident now going to sell B2B into incubators, universities, and schools. So that's been really helpful. Yeah. But the sales cycles are long when you do B2B sales, right? And on the Fluxo side, we're much earlier stage. So we've got some really engaged early customers, I think, because they have they're just growing out of their startup journey. They are very understanding of where we are on ours. And so that partnership works really well for us. I think that they are very excited about, firstly, a bit of the leveling playing field. So them versus the distributors they work with. One of our customers is in the US. And so they have a much bigger distribution network, which you interact with in addition to retailers. And they're really excited about us saving them time and cash, but particularly recouping cash faster for them, which will enable them to grow without additional investment. And in the UK, I think it's something maybe that structurally businesses have not shouted about as much as maybe they could.
Okay.
And so we're starting to get feedback. If I'm honest, I think that the finding product market fit will take us a little bit longer here.
Yeah.
And there are, many and varied reasons we're discovering for why that might be the case. But that means we've got work to do and we need to do it well.
Yeah.
So we continue to talk to customers. I love listening to people rant about their many and varied operational problems. I heard them a lot at Amazon and now again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the operational agony aunt, that's a lot of my time. And I think a lot of it is you need to be involved in the community. And I have been on the retail side and I still advise retailers. So I haven't left that world, but I think I've got a lot to prove as a leader and a part of the brand ecosystem as well. And I'm very keen to help. So a lot of the time I spend having coffee chats and talking about commercials and how they're thinking about growth strategy internationally, which I did a bit of, to see if I can be useful first.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a broader question off the back of that. So being a founder or running your own businesses, was it what you had imagined when you had that idea about, leaving Amazon and going out and, founding and setting up on your own? Did you have a vision in your head as to what it would look like? And has that transpired now you're out there, or does it look completely different?
So, some of it has been very ironic. I left saying I never wanted to work full time again because I wanted, balance. I was very keen on doing the exercise and having the Friday and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I now work just the same hours as a lead at Amazon.
Yeah.
But for way less pay. My boss is awful. She's a good friend. And but there's real joy in what I'm doing. The learning is really diverse. The learning has definitely far exceeded my expectations. The exposure to new, interesting people and their problems, which I love, has also far exceeded expectations, and the opportunities to go and try things and the willingness for people to give me those opportunities has been a real gift. So I do love it.
Yeah.
It is hard work,
Yeah.
but it doesn't come with the same, for me, level of stress and frankly anxiety as some of the career that I had for the past 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. I mean, yeah, we're sort of similar, I would say, in that vein, whereby, and I know it's this, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's like when you're working, it doesn't necessarily feel as though it's work or the traditional sense of what you have known work to be. It feels a bit more like you're problem solving, and when you get to the end of solving a problem, it's rewarding in that sense, and going back to customers, and like you saying, speaking to people who have got interesting backgrounds or interesting problems to solve is always, yeah, it's like it's a new challenge. It's a good challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. We're going to move into a bit of career and then wrap up now. So when we look at your career throughout, you've led big teams, you've rebuilt big teams over time. When you think back to career advice that you've been given, is there any standout piece that comes to mind, one standout bit of career advice that someone's given you that always sticks with you and resonates? And if there is, what would you say that was?
It's not just one, I think. There've been a few. So there's, in terms of direction, the advice that I've gone back to time and again is follow the tailwinds. So look for where there is some emerging theme where people are investing, whether that's time, money, innovation, and go there even if it's small. Go and find those opportunities because inevitably they will get bigger and you will be able to grow within those spaces. And that's definitely something I've done going to Amazon, even though Amazon was already a big deal, right? By 2017, when I started, there was a tailwind behind the business that I think was really, really valuable for my career. Similarly, moving into the marketplace organization, it at the time that I went was a component of Amazon, but it was one that was getting a lot more support back in 2019 because they knew it had big opportunity. So that's been a really big one. There's a piece around relationships where the advice has been, build trust because it is the thing that sticks. And I think for me, it is also the thing that builds my confidence. If I know that I'm working with people who trust me and I trust them,
Yeah.
I do better work and I know that we will do better work together, which has been really useful. And then I think that there's, all of the stuff that I think is pretty standard, but still holds own things. Do what you say you'll do by when you say you'll do them. Be reliable. Do them to a great standard as well, by the way, because that tends to surprise people and it seems to work well. And the other piece is say yes a lot, even if it's really painful, because the yes is the stuff that gets you the next opportunity or it really kind of helps people to understand that you are the one who will put your hand up and give it a go
Yeah.
when other people may not. So I think those are really big. And then the last one, which was my really big one, particularly for, I had a large group of apprentices, like very, very young people starting out their careers, often without tertiary education yet. They get a university qualification as part of it. Personal brand is hugely important.
Yeah.
People knowing what you stand for and not cultivating it in a way that has ego, but cultivating it in a way so that people really know who you are and could summarize you in 5 words that you hope are complimentary about what you do and how you do it
Yeah.
is really important. And I think that's the type of stuff that unlocks doors or gets you back into a room, even if you haven't seen someone for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I totally agree with you on the personal brand side, naturally, from LinkedIn background. Great place to build it. And obviously, yeah, I think all the other advice within there, very, very sage. And that piece around putting your hand up to say yes to things, I think is, yeah, when you're young in your career, and when I look back as well, it's one of those pieces where maybe I wish I'd put my hand up a few more times. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that as well on that side. We're going to move to quickfire and close. So these are just quickfire answers off the top of your head, whatever comes to mind, first of all. So first of all, is there one myth, one Amazon myth that you want to kill? What do you hear all the time that just isn't true?
I think a lot of people believe that the people who work at Amazon are machines. They don't care. They're just It's fundamentally wrong. I have never worked with a group of people who are more focused, really conscious of trying to do their best and giving a load of probably more time than they should to most of the things that matter to the sellers they work with, their peers, and the customers that they're working for. And I think that has held true for the entire time I've been there. And I still look at the teams there who I'm in touch with, and it's still sound.
Perfect. Is there a tool or a platform or something that you can't live without? If you're to name one.
A tool. Well, I mean, I think by pure time, it would be my phone, unfortunately.
Okay.
And as a result, my diary. But my kind of curveball answer would be a pair of muck boots. I don't know if you've come across them.
Okay.
Insulated wellies. I had 2 sons. Spent a lot of time outside. It's been extraordinarily cold for a while. Some warm toes and some wellies are the way forward.
A bit of an essential, especially now. So, okay, very good. Is there a belief that you hold that most people disagree with?
This is the controversial bit you don't cut at the end. I think I've learned that when people disagree with you, they don't necessarily do it verbally anymore. They do it in what they do or follow up with, right? And so I think to answer your question, I believe that at this point in where we are as a society, it should not be unusual, or it should be entirely standard for a woman to be able to have an executive career and a family, do a little bit of light exercise occasionally, and have a social life without falling over. And my observation is I still think that's quite a luxury good, which makes me incredibly frustrated. And I think that it is a luxury good because people disagree in their actions around the policies we've put in place, the way businesses support women and men, by the way, to make that happen, and some of our kind of broader societal norms that are still incredibly hard to evolve. I understand that there are cases where that's, I am not one of those cases, and I'm incredibly privileged to be in this position. But I think for a lot of people, this should not be as hard as it is.
Yeah. The balance is still somewhat off, whereas maybe we talk a good game, but don't actually act in the way that it should be acted out. Okay, very good. And then the final one, is there one thing that's top of mind that you think a brand should fix, like this quarter?
Gross margin.
Okay.
I think don't assume that the margin is going to get better, right? Everything we see about the current economic context is inflation will continue. It might not be what it was 2 years ago, but costs are still going to continue going up. And if they're not going up, there's going to be uncertainty, which means you can't bank that they're going to get better in the next 18 months. In terms of top line, customers are price sensitive and they will continue to be. So you're not going to be able to kind of get anything on the top. And there's way more competition than there was. So don't be a charity and sell something at a loss. Be really, really clear on what your gross margin is and make sure that you are cutting off a long tail if it's stuff that's not going to make you any profit.
Sound advice. And that brings us to the end.
Super.
Thank you
Nice.
so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all your insights. And yeah, that's it.
Great.
So that was Stacey van der Aardweg joining us for episode 1 of series 2 of the Deep Blue podcast. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.